Section 2. You will hear a speaker talking about attractions in Las Vegas. First, you will have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15. Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting me here to talk about places to visit in the USA. For my presentation today, I'd like to focus on Las Vegas, which, as many of you will know, is in Nevada. When talking about Las Vegas, the first thing that comes to mind for most people is gambling. Now, of course, it's true that gambling is a major aspect of the city. There are over 100 casinos. However, there is actually a whole lot more that you can do there, and that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. Without even needing to travel out of the city, there are plenty of different and exciting things to do. We'll start by talking about the museums in the area. One of the most well-known is the National Museum of Organized Crime and Law Enforcement, or the Mob Museum as it is more commonly known. This is a self-guided tour where you can find out about the history of organized crime in the area and the people that were involved. Visitors can listen to conversations between criminals that were recorded by the police nearly 100 years ago, and you can even sit in a real electric chair. For something a little more lighthearted, you can also visit the Pinball Hall of Fame, a museum for pinball machines that opened January 2006. Containing over 200 different pinball machines, the museum also has some classic video games and is funded purely from donations. In fact, this museum is not run to make a profit, and any excess revenue is passed on to charities in the area. There are also museums for car lovers, a waxwork museum with images of famous people molded in wax, an aviation museum with full-sized airplanes, and much more. But for those of you who are looking for a little more of a thrill than a museum, there are plenty of more exciting options. Take, for example, the High Roller. At nearly 170 meters high, it was the world's largest Ferris wheel when it was built in 2014. There are 32 cabins on the wheel, each of which can accommodate up to 40 people, and it takes about 30 minutes for the wheel to turn all the way around. There is also the Big Apple roller coaster, which reaches speeds of nearly 70 miles per hour and has 2 loops, as well as a terrifying 50-meter drop. In total, the track is over 1.5 kilometers long, but the ride itself takes less than 3 minutes. And perhaps one of the most interesting aspects of this ride is that it actually begins and ends inside a hotel, with the track snaking its way around the outside of 2 buildings before ending back in the hotel to finish. You now have some time to read questions 16 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer questions 16 to 20. Another place that is extremely popular for day trippers is the Hoover Dam, and that's what I would like to talk about now. First, let's talk about some important dates. The idea of building a dam was first discussed as far back as 1900, but it was not until 1928 that the project was authorized by the government. In 1931, a group of companies finally began construction with a completion date of 1938. However, the dam was actually finished and in operation 2 years ahead of schedule in 1936. Construction of the dam faced some massive challenges. The first was to divert the Colorado River, and this was done by drilling 4 tunnels into the canyon walls, and these tunnels had a combined length of over 5 kilometers. Next came the beginning of the dam itself. Rising to a height of 221 meters, the dam was a massive undertaking. The people who worked at those heights, supported only by ropes, were called high scalers, and this was arguably the most dangerous job of them all. Falling rocks and broken ropes caused many deaths and injuries. But this was also the time when safety equipment started to become used in construction. Initially, to protect their heads from falling rocks, the high scalers dipped pieces of cloth into tar and waited for the tar to harden before strapping them to their heads. When the companies saw how effective this simple measure was, they ordered thousands of what were initially called hard-boiled hats, which later became known as hard hats, which are still in use, although of course in an updated version, on construction sites today. However, falling rock was not the only danger the workers faced. The heat alone, which regularly reached over 45 degrees, was responsible for the death of 16 workers. Others died from carbon monoxide poisoning from the use of petrol-powered generators and vehicles in tunnels without enough fresh air. And in total, 112 people died during the dam's construction. Despite this heavy cost, the dam has performed without any major incident since the time of its construction and provides power for approximately 1.3 million people.
That is the end of section 2. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3.